Okay, brilliant. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new video. Sorry I missed you all last week with the show, mainly because we had Senate interviews, which clashed in with the time of the show, so obviously I couldn't do it, which is a shame, but sure, what can you do? I'm back again anyway, and this week we have a quite interesting story. Today we're actually going to be talking about Robert Enke, or Enke, he who was a German goalkeeper whose life has been immortalized in the book A Life Too Short, which was published 3 years after his death. And this story that I'm going to tell you all is a harrowing example of depression in football, which thankfully today has become less of a taboo subject in football, but certainly back when Robert was playing, it certainly wasn't as spoken about. But it kind of shows the importance of the need for footballers to talk about their mental health. So to start with, Enke was born on the 24th of August in Jena, which is a town of about 500,000 people in the east of Germany. And he began playing football at an early age, where he initially played as a striker, like many people do, and then he ended up as a goalkeeper, where his talent really began to shine. He would end up joining the local club, FC Karl Zeiss Jena, who at the time were in second or the third tier of German football, and obviously now I think they're low, but they were a pretty relatively big team at the time. And he would go on to rise through the ranks at the club and sign his first professional contract at 17. And he would make his debut in the 1995-96 season against Hanover, who would become another one of his clubs in the Zwei Bundesliga, or second division in Germany. And he would make three. However, he would only make three appearances during that season before he was eventually swiped up by Borussia Mönchengladbach in the summer of 1996. He would have to bide his time before making his debut in August 1998 in a 3-0 win over Schalke. But unfortunately for Enke, Mönchengladbach suffered a terrible run of form, and they would eventually finish bottom of the table that season. And as a result, Enke, with his flourishing career, decided, okay, I need to go. And that's what he would do. He signed for Benfica in June 1999 on a 3-year contract. And the club was managed by fellow German Jupp Heynckes of Bayern Munich fame, which obviously would have helped him settle in a bit, knowing that there was someone who understood him. And however, his time in Portugal was turbulent, to say the least. The club changed manager 3 times in 3 seasons, and in one of those seasons, they suffered their lowest ever finish of 6th. And it was also stricken with financial difficulties that caused players' wages to be late on multiple occasions. And despite these problems, Enke's performances gained him the admiration of the Benfica fan base, as well as interest in major clubs such as Arsenal, Atleti, and Manchester United, of course, who were the big dons at the time. You all know that I didn't need to tell you that. But anyway, he would actually end up moving to Barcelona on a 3-year deal in the 2002 summer transfer window on a free transfer. However, it was tough for him at the new camp. He would later label the goalkeeping spot the most difficult goalkeeping position in world football. And he wasn't even first choice. That was the main thing. And he was oftentimes behind the likes of Victor Valdez, who was very young at the time. And he would make his debut, and his debut would kind of set the premise for times to come, when in the game that he played, Barcelona were knocked out in the Spanish Cup by Novella, who were in the third tier at the time. And I don't even think we're in the third tier now, but hopefully, or not hopefully, but I might be wrong on that. And as a result of this game, he was criticised by Frank de Boer in public for his part in their exit. And, this was not very well received by the author of Enke's biography. And it kind of said that, this wouldn't have helped him, and he was kind of getting depressed. And all of this sort of pressure, and then you have like his teammates piling pressure on him. And as we all know now, that isn't the thing to do. Like, it's pretty stupid, to be honest. But it happened. And his brief taste of La Liga for Enke would come as a 20-minute would come in a 20-minute appearance as a substitute in a 2-2 draw against Osasuna on the 2nd of March 2003. And he would also make 2 Champions League appearances for the club. And when Frank Rijkaard replaced Louis van Gaal as coach, he was loaned out to Fenerbahce, but it was a terrible, 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 terrible loan move. I have to emphasize that. And he played one game, mainly because he played one game for the club, and they lost against Istanbulspor 3-0, which is obviously not very good for Fenerbahce or whatever. And the fallout from this defeat was certainly traumatic for him, as his own fans pelted him with fire letters and bottles during the game, and they also blamed him for the loss. And as a result of this, Enke immediately cancelled his loan spell. And for the rest of the season, he was loaned and in the January transfer window, in fact, he was loaned out to second division side in Spain, Tenerife, where he would enjoy an upturn in his form, and he would go on to join Hanover in the Bundesliga on an initial 2-year deal. And this ultimately was where he found his greatest stability, becoming firmly established in the team, and he was voted the best keeper in the league by his fellow professionals in Kicker magazine. He signed another 2-year contract extension in 2006, and he was made captain of the team for the 2007-08 season, a role which he would keep for the rest of his career. He would also make his international debut for Germany in a 1-0 defeat against Denmark in Denmark in March 2007. And he was also an unused substitute for Euro 2008. And after Jens Lehmann retired, he was in contention for the number 1 spot ahead of Manuel Neuer of all people. And he was obviously a big time. He was going to become big time Manuel Neuer because he was playing at Schalke at the time. And as we all know, most young players from Schalke are usually quite good. And he would go on to make 8 appearances for Germany in total. And he played 180 times for Hanover. And he made a final appearance of his career in a 2-2 draw at home to Hamburg. However, now we're just going to go into his personal life and just kind of see where I kind of all turned for the worst for Enke. So Enke and his wife Teresa had a child called Lara, who was born with a heart defect, and she was deaf as an effect of the drugs that were used to treat her heart problems. And she would have a cochlear implant for those who don't know, like cochlear implants are essentially they allow you to hear. But she would die in 2006 as a result of these complications. And this kind of felt like massive guilt for Enke, and he would be quite depressed at the time, and he remained depressed. And he did continue to seek help throughout his time in football, although it wasn't put in the spotlight for fear of, obviously it would damage his reputation, and it's kind of like the masculine image of being strong, and I guess that doesn't really move in with like someone being vulnerable or depressed or whatever. So, it would be quite it's quite hard for Enke at the time. And this would culminate on the night of the 10th of November 2009 at the age of 32. Enke committed suicide standing in front of a regional express train at a level crossing. And it was devastating at the time. Many fans immediately flocked to Hanover's stadium to lay flowers and light candles and sign the book of condolence upon the news breaking. His former club Barcelona held a minute's silence before that game that night, and several international matches the following weekend paid the same tribute. As a mark of respect, the German national team cancelled their friendly match against Chile, which had been scheduled for the 14th of November, and a minute's silence was also held at all Bundesliga games from the 21st to the 22nd of November 2009, and at Benfica's game in the Cup of Portugal, or the Portuguese Cup. And Germany also cancelled a planned training session and all interviews after his death. And nearly 40,000 people attended his memorial service, which was at the stadium. And he was then buried outside Hanover next to his daughter's grave. As a further mark of respect for his former teammate, the players of Hanover 96 displayed the number 1 in a circle on the breast of their jerseys, which was worn for the rest of the 2009-10 season. And this is over 10 years. This is over 10 years ago, and it still felt around Hanover. And it was almost just as if what could have been. As I've said already, he really had potential, and he looked like he was in contention for the number 1 spot in the German national team coming into the World Cup. So it's a really tragic story, and I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you have learned mainly that it's really, really important it's really important to say that you need help if you ever need to feel it. If you ever feel like you're down or any difficulties at all, it's imperative that you talk to someone, because you never know, it's really important to get help. So definitely you can call the ambulance service, Jigsaw, any service at all, any mental health service. I'm sure there's loads out there that will help you. And yeah, definitely just make sure that you seek help if you need it. So on that somber note, I'd like to thank you all for listening to the show today. And I'll be back next week with another topic that I hope you will enjoy. That'll be it for now. Goodbye.